so excited about the throwback today, and then you throw me back. I'm wearing a jacket because when I throw back, I'll be wearing a jacket. Say, I need me should be wearing. I wasn't bad crowd. I'm talking about maybe 15, 16, whatever years ago. I did a wonderful interview with a good man. I won't even say a good friend, a good man of Ghana, Kwesi Pratt, aka MASSA. And when I was going through my throwbacks, I realized that I had done more like an up close and personal chat with MASSA. And today, I say I am playing back. This is the throwback we have for you today. KSM goes up close and personal with MASSA. Thank you. Thank you. Oh man, you're too kind. I am so thrilled this evening. This is one of the most exciting things I'm about to do here. The next man, my next guest, a man I respect, I admire, I consider him one of my role models, man. He is brave, he is courageous. Everybody knows him, but I don't know that, maybe you didn't know he was once a boxer. He reads a lot. He has a fascinating mind. His sense of logic is impeccable. Let me shut up. Let me introduce the man I call MASSA. Ladies and gentlemen, show some love for the man, Mr. Kwesi Pratt Jr. MASSA. MASSA. Good to see you, man. Good to see you. Please sit, man. MASSA. Welcome. Yeah, thank you. It's really good to have you here, Kwesi. I'm glad to have you here finally. And by the way, I dress like this because I want to look like Nkrumah so that you feel a little more comfortable.
Well, that may be very intimidating.
Very intimidating. Well, I don't know if I can push it that far. How are you doing, man?
Well, we're trying. KSM, we're trying.
Yeah.
Things are very difficult, but we're trying to survive.
Yeah. I'm going to get there because people are fascinated with you, your energy, your resilience, your Teflon nature. Nothing seems to stick. You keep moving, man. We'll get to that. And I can't wait to get to that. But let me take you a little bit back into your childhood. You were born in 1953 at Salaga Market.
Yeah.
Is it at the market or you?
Well, there was a maternity home in the market,
okay,
or close to the market, just behind the general post office. And it was run by a lady called Auntie Sisi. And in those days, it was where everybody got born, you know. And I was born in Auntie Sisi maternity home in the Salaga market.
And your father was a labor activist.
Yes. Eventually became the General Secretary of the Public Workers Services Union.
I see.
He was very active in the labor movement.
We'll get to how that has influenced your pro-labor stance. But I don't want to fast forward. But and your mother was a caterer?
My mother was a caterer and a seamstress. I mean, she used to make dresses. And they like to call themselves a seamstress and caterers and so on. Caterer, she just used to cook, you know, and sell food, you know.
Any of them living?
Yeah, my mother is living. She's in a pretty bad shape now. How old is she? She's 80. 80? 80. She's in a pretty bad shape. I mean, I was there to see her only yesterday. And she couldn't even recognize me. That's how bad it is. You know?
Wow. And she lives where?
She lives in Kotobabi. Kotobabi down, in Accra.
And your father has moved on, I guess?
My father moved on more than 10 years ago. You know, he left much earlier. As a matter of fact, I was feeding him when he left.
You were?
I was feeding him when he left, when he choked on the food and left, you know, and but he's gone, you know.
So your mother at least has lived to see a little bit of the revolutionary son that she was responsible for delivering into the world.
Well, she's still alive, and we are hoping that she'll pull out of her current crisis and stay around a little longer.
Yeah.
and see the world, you know, undergo all the changes that the world is going through today.
Yes, and she, being 80, she's seen quite a bit.
She's probably seen a lot more than many people.
Yeah.
Because by some accident of history, she was a first cousin to the late Kojo Botio. Oh. And in the thick of the independence struggle, when many of the activists, including Nkrumah and others, were not attached, she was the one who was invited to come and look after them. So she stayed in the same house with Nkrumah, Botio, all the leading activists, and was responsible for their feeding, running the house, and so on. So she's seen quite a bit, you know.
Wow.
Yeah,
wow.
She's seen quite a bit.
Wow. You know. Let's go a little bit into your childhood growing up. How many siblings do you have?
I think that there were 9 of us. 9 of us. There's a senior one who passed away last year, I think, and I have 7 others after me. You know,
7 others after you.
Yeah, 7 others after me.
Yeah. What was your upbringing like, Kwesi? I mean, your father. What kind of father in terms of the upbringing?
Well, it's difficult to tell. I mean, many of those things must be very hazy now. But I remember that I was quite close to my father. We used to eat together. My father used to play the guitar. And he was a footballer of sorts. And anytime he went to play football, I would go with him. You know, and he used to travel around a lot. He got transferred to Koforidua, he got transferred to Kumasi, to Tamale, and everywhere he went, I went with him. You know, and we're quite close. I remember when I was in secondary school, we could sit up throughout the night.
With your father?
Yeah, arguing about everything and anything.
Was it with all the kids, or you particularly was closer to him in terms of?
None of the kids at the time was interested in the things that I was interested in.
What were you
and the
interested
things
in?
that excited him. Well, I remember reading Marx about first year in secondary school.
Karl Marx?
Yeah, reading Marx first year in secondary school. And my father was one of the first Ghanaians to be trained in Czechoslovakia, in the party school, and also in the trade union institution in Czechoslovakia. And he had come back with all this literature that I used to read, and he was fascinated by it.
Wow. He was fascinated by your interest in...
Yeah.
What school, by the way?
I went to Tema Secondary School. Secondary School. And, you know, he would try to find out what I had read and whether I understood it and so on. And we would argue about anything and everything, you know, for hours.
What was it at that age that fascinated you about Marx? What prompted you to read it?
Well, I'm not so sure. The books were different from all the books that we knew, and my father had brought them, and I would open them and read. I don't even think that I understood what I was reading at the time, you know, but why? One of the first passages I read said something like the history of all hitherto existing societies, the history of class struggle. I'm just fascinated by the words and the way they were put together and so on, you know. Even now, I don't think that I have a very clear understanding of Marx's philosophy or any other philosophy. I'm trying very hard to understand it. I'm trying very hard to understand the world.
Yeah.
I don't think I've gotten there yet.
At that age, when you were engaging in conversations with your dad and having arguments, do you remember some of the things you used to debate or talk about?
A lot. My father was a very passionate Christian, exceedingly passionate Christian. Indeed, he became chairman of the St. Gabriel Anglican Church and was very active in the Anglican movement and so on. He used to go to church every day and so on. Now, very early in my development, I began questioning some of the actions of church goers, you know, and some of the things that we were taught and so on. And that was one thing
like what?
Well, these are things that I find very difficult to discuss in public and so on, but I'll give you a few examples. If you're brought up as a Christian, as a very religious person, you are told about the omnipotence and omnipresence of God and so on. But if you do any rational examination of these teachings, they don't hang together. Something must be wrong, you understand? And I like to go back to Bertrand Russell, who is one of the most rational thinkers of our time. You know, he's so rational, so logical, that sometimes it's absurd. And it's Bertrand Russell who posed the question, very interesting question. And his question simply was, can God create a stone so big that he can't carry. And you realize immediately that any answer you give to this would question this whole philosophy, this whole conception of the world, which is built around omnipotence and omnipresence. Because if he can create a stone so big that he can't carry, it will show a certain limit to his powers. On the other hand, if he can't create a stone so big that he can't carry, that would also show a certain limit to his powers and so on. But in all of this, we have to understand that we are told by the same Bible that God moves in mysterious ways, and that God is beyond the thinking of ordinary mortals like you and I and so on. You know, so I think that we have to take it all in our stride. You know, very early when I was growing up, I also got to understand that the guy who first discovered that the earth was not flat, you know, the early Christian belief
that the earth was flat.
Was that the earth was flat. And that if you walked from one point and continued walking in the same direction, you fall into a huge hole and so on. And there was a scientist, I think it was Copernicus or so, who came up and said, look, it cannot be so. And that if you started moving in a straight line and continued moving in that straight line, the likelihood was that you will come back to the same point where you started, because the earth was round or spherical. You know, the early religious leaders captured this guy and killed him for blasphemy. Now we know that he was right and the religious leaders were wrong. You understand? So these were thoughts which went through my mind all the time. And I thought that religion has some relevance. Indeed, I can imagine a world without religion. That would be a world full of sin, full of hatred, and so on. Religion tampers our basic instincts. Religion instills in us some sense of belonging and so on. I think that it's all right for people to be religious. But even as I think that it's all right for people to be religious, I think that the bigotry associated with religion also ought to be tempered. I think that religion ought to be interested in the facts. Because the fact at the time was that the earth was not flat, but round or spherical. And religion refused to accept the fact. You know. So this is my attitude. You know.
Well, it's getting exciting. We're going to take a commercial break. When we come back, more of Kwesi Pratt Jr. We'll be right back. Yes, we're hanging out with Kwesi Pratt Jr. Moving it along, Kwesi. I was talking in the beginning about my introduction, that you're Teflon, man. You've gone through stuff, man. You've gone through era of taking $125,000 bribes and being a snitch, being everything. Before I get to you, how does your wife and your family deal with when you're in the spotlight and there's the bashing? How do they handle it?
Well, I think I'm a very regular guy. And my wife and kids are also quite regular. There's nothing extraordinary about my family. We're very simple, down-to-earth people. We eat, we laugh, we cry when we have to, you know, we jump around and so on. We're a very ordinary family. And it's like any other family, you know.
Well, it's not every ordinary person that goes through your normal day, you know. You're in the newspapers, you are attacked, you are praised, you are criticized, you are torn apart. So I don't know how ordinary you are in terms of your public stature.
Well, I think it's very ordinary. I've been like this for many, many years. You know, the first radio program I did was very early in 1972 or 73. You know, I was pretty young then. No. It was about 1969, 69, the first radio program that I did.
On GBC?
Yeah, on GBC.
Hosting?
I wasn't hosting, you know. Sometime in September 1969 or 70, there had been the United Nations Mock General Assembly. And I represented my school as I was acting Colonel Gaddafi of Libya and so on. And there was this gentleman who was in broadcasting, Uncle Frank Autry, you know, the Frank Autry show and so on. So he invited me to join his show. This was very, very early in my life, and I did the first show. And then eventually I became a regular reader of poems on the program, and then I started writing scripts and all, you know. And even in the days when we had one television station and one radio station, as it were, I was on radio 4 or 5 times a week.
Really?
And I was on television 2 or 3 times a week, you know.
And what issues were you talking about then?
Well, I was a regular interviewer on In Town, which was then presented by Emilia Krumoladama, one of the best broadcasters of all time, you know. And then I used to do Builders of Tomorrow, which was then produced by John Gafachi and others. And then I used to do Mike Egan Show. I did a couple of Mike Egan shows and so on, you know. And Talking Point, even at that very early age, I used to participate as a panelist on Talking Point and so on, you know. So I had a very regular, active media life, you know, long ago, from about 1969, 1970.
I see.
You know, and it's been like that all throughout, except in some very difficult periods, you know. I remember during the Achampong regime, I think it was on the Mike Egan Show, I was being interviewed on the Mike Egan Show, and I made the point about the collaboration of the Western governments with Kotoka and others in the overthrow of the Nkrumah government. And I went to town, you know, and there were protests from the Western embassies to the Achampong government. And then I got off air for a while, you know, but I came back. And I stayed on air up to about 1982, you know, when I was taken off air again, because the Provisional National Defense Council was not too comfortable with some of the things that I used to say and so on. So I was taken off air for a very long time. I came back on air maybe around 1991 or thereabout, you know, briefly. And then started, you know, full-time appearances from 1992, you know. But even when I was off air, I was doing a lot of writing. I was writing for many magazines around the world. I used to write for Africa World Review. I used to write for Africa Textiles. I used to write for Africa Agriculture, you know, Review and so on. I used to write for New Africa. I used to write for West Africa Magazine.
Wow.
I wrote for Africa Analysis, you know. I wrote for all kinds of papers, Africa Newsline. I wrote for Africa Confidential, you know, and so on. So I've been very active in the media.
I see. Did you ever go through any formal training, journalism or media? I did.
I did some formal training. I went to the Ghana Institute of Journalism, where I learned journalism. But yeah, it contributed. But I think that there's a lot more.
You had a passion for...
Not just the passion. I was the editor of the school magazine. I worked on the school magazine when I was very young. And then, from then on, I've interacted with all kinds of people. You know, my friends are my greatest teachers, you know, and they teach me all the time. I learn on the streets. I learn everywhere, you understand? So the formal training is important. The formal training, you know, delineated the parameters and so on. But a lot of it has come from my everyday, ordinary interaction with different people and so on, you know. And I'm satisfied with the kind of practice I've had as a journalist, you know. One time, I got an article published in the Independent of London, you understand? I'd written a long article about Nkrumah, and they published about 5 paragraphs of that, you know, not the whole article. I'd written an article of about 5 pages, and they published just about 5 paragraphs of that and paid me those days about £150. And that was something, you know.
Yeah. What year? Around what year was this?
This must have been around 1987, 88. It was a time when Richard Dowden was the Africa editor of the Independent, you know, and I'd met Richard Dowden a couple of times. We had conversations and so on. And I was trying to break into that regular, you know, traditional Western media. And all I managed to do was to get 5 articles, 5 paragraphs published in the Independent. And I thought that it was great, you know. I thought that it was great. You know.
So in effect, your activist or social crusader role goes way back. Before you met Marianne, you were crusading?
I wouldn't call myself a crusader. I wouldn't call myself... I don't do things deliberately.
Okay.
I don't plan to do things and so on. I mean, things just happen, and they happen so naturally. Nothing is deliberate. You understand? Nothing is deliberate. They just happen. You know, one of the, if you like, landmarks, one of them happened in 1986. There was a press conference at the Ministry of Information. I had gone there. The Minister for Finance then, Dr. Kwesi Pratt, had come and read the budget. And it was question time. And a lot of the things that he had said did not make sense to me. So I just put up my hand, walked to the microphone, as every other journalist would walk to a microphone and ask a question. And as I got to the microphone, I found myself tearing the budget to pieces and telling him that it was a load of, you know, and everything about the budget. And then I realized that there are serious memories in the room, and within 3 days, it was the main thing everywhere.
That you went and tore up the budget.
And that I went and tore up the budget. I mean, those were the days when the culture of silence had been imposed, and very people could stand up, you know, to authority and so on. But I did not even know that I was standing up to authority. Something which happened so spontaneously.
When you were walking up there, did you have in mind, I'm going to take the button and rip it, or as you just started talking?
No, as I just started talking, everything just came out, you know, all the revulsion that I had for the IMF program, for the regime and so on, everything just came out, you know. And then I went and tried, you know, to sit down, and people came to me and said, leave, it's dangerous, you've done something terrible, you know. And then I get out of the hall, and people come and they say, run, they're going to come for you. And truly, they came for me, and I spent how long? I spent 3.5 months in prison, you know, later.
The budget.
Well, they didn't tell me that they were sending me to prison to budget, but my arrest was too close to that, and everybody believed that.
But did they give you a reason for the arrest?
Nobody gave me a reason for my arrest, you know. So I spent 3.5 months in prison. You understand? And this was spontaneous. One other thing which has happened is the attempt I made to take a photograph of Hotel Kufuor.
Just one shot.
Just one shot, you know.
Just one shot.
Just one shot. And there was nothing deliberate about it. I was in the studio, Radio Gold, Alaji and Alaji, having a discussion. And I was condemning the arrest of the, you know, of the journalists from TV3, the crew and so on.
Yeah.
And then it became a heated argument. And the other side of the argument, you know, started being quite boisterous, you know. And in the midst of it all, spontaneous, I said, well, in that case, I'm going to take a photograph myself and, you know, bear the consequences. I'm going to take a photograph and see what you can do to me, you know. And then immediately, people started calling and said, I'm going with you, you know, and so on. And I got to Airport Junction at the appointed time. We were about 3 of us. In a matter of 5 minutes, we were about 200. In a matter of 15 minutes, we were about 500 people marching to Hotel Kufuor and so on, you know. It was so dramatic. And yet, it had not been planned. It was spontaneous, you know, and I'm not deliberate about anything. I don't want to be an agitator. I don't want to be an agitator.
You see yourself as an agitator?
Well, they say I am, you know.
That's your brand.
Yeah, I want to be as everybody else. Regular guy, enjoying life, having some peace, you know. Learning about the world and how it works and so on. That's regular guy. That's what I want to be, you know.
So in all this, I just want your Marian, your wife. Has there been moments that it says, you know, back off, let's just be the father of the family and let's live happily ever after? Is it worth it? No.
I think that life has been very peaceful.
Yeah.
You know.
What kind of father are you?
Like you. Like you. I mean, well, maybe there's a reason why people think that I'm not a regular guy. I leave the house very early. Because, I mean, on Mondays I have to come to this studio and do a program for 1.5 hours and so on. If I leave the house around 6 o'clock, I'll be caught up in traffic. I can't get here at 7. So I leave the house about 5 o'clock, you know. Almost every day, 5 o'clock in the morning, leave the house, get out, read the newspapers, and help with others to do the review. And then I go to the office and I get soaked in all manner of things. People come with all kinds of problems, sometimes including their medical problems, social problems, and so on. You are soaked in that. You try to do some kind of writing. When it's necessary, you want to read on a particular subject and so on. And then there are the meetings of Socialist Forum and all kinds of things and so on. And by the time you realize it's 7 p.m.
Yeah. Do you have any relaxing moments where you just...
Well, all the things that I do are very relaxing. Like what I'm doing now, they're all very relaxing,
really?
you know.
So
but
when
then,
you're radio talking, like on Alaji, it's a relaxing thing for you?
I think so.
Really?
I don't feel any tension at all. There are a few moments when some people really... there are a few moments when some people really get you, you know. But otherwise, it's very relaxing, you know.
And your children...
I'm talking to them all the time.
Yeah.
You know, I'm on the phone with them all the time. I get home sometimes midnight and they are not asleep, you know, and we can talk till whatever, you know. Sometimes I get home 10. When I get home 10, then we can talk for a few hours and so on. And we are all together. Yeah. They come to the office when they are free.
You have 3? Yeah,
3.
Yeah. I have a really beautiful daughter in the university. Are you?
Whoa.
Are you there? have the guys started knocking down the doors yet for her? And
well, I think that's one hell of a daughter, you know, and I'm very proud of her. She started writing for the Inside.
Oh, she's writing for the Inside now?
She started writing for the Inside. She used to write a column, a teens page, when she was in secondary school from 1. She started reading the newspapers when she was in primary school.
Really?
Yeah. She's currently in 4th year in Legon, and she's planning to do law thereafter, you know. She's done all manner of things. I mean, I was quite surprised when she came home one day and said she was competing in the Miss SS, you know, she was taking part in the Miss SS competition. And we went there and she won. Wow. You know, and she does all kinds of things. She's extremely intelligent and very, very hardworking. You know, I'm so proud of her. And then I've got twins, twin boys.
Oh, 2? Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And one of them is in 2nd year and the other is in 1st year, you know, at Legon. Well, they're doing their best. I'm so happy. The first guy is doing a Bachelor of Arts degree. And his results, his 1st year results were so impressive. And I do hope that the second guy would do the same. You know, he wanted to do administration, he couldn't get in. And he's now doing a Bachelor of Arts with a bias for television and radio production.
Okay, I wonder why.
Yeah, I don't know why. I have no idea why. You know. But they're all interested in radio and television production. They're into music. Indeed, my twin sons won a dancing competition 2 years ago. They are such excellent dancers, you know. And
they still dance?
Yeah, they dance.
Maybe we can get them on this show to come and do a...
They won a dancing competition about 2 years ago. There was a time when I was going to the beach. I was going to see a friend at the beach, Mr. Sangari, the popular businessman and so on. And I got to the beach and I saw that a crowd had gathered and, you know, generally, Ashijama, you know.
Yeah, so you went to check it out.
So as I got closer, I saw my 2 little boys doing the drumming and people were dancing and so on. And I said, what? Where did they pick this from?
Really?
You know, yeah.
So that was the first time you had seen them in their elements, dancing?
That was the first time I'd seen them actually on the drums and you know, exciting people and so on, you know. And I hope that they do well. You know. I hope that they
so are they a group now called like the Brothers Pratt or something?
No. They're not in any group. You know, they just make a lot of noise in the house. So much noise in the house, it's incredible. You know? Yeah.
What are some of your hobbies? You actually used to box before I get to that. Did you try boxing?
Yes, I tried boxing, but I got so beaten so badly I had to quit. You know.
But were you thinking of going into it professionally as a career?
No, I grew up in Kotowabi Down. And one of the features of Kotowabi Down was the JK Mensa Boxing Club, where all the boxing greats used to train. Floyd Patterson used to come there and train. Floyd Robertson used to come there and train. Joe Tete, and all of them, you know. So all the kids in the area, you know, used to wear the gloves and take it out on ourselves and so on. But part of it was that grudges also got settled in the boxing ring. And there was this day that I wore my gloves and so on. There's a guy who is still there. He's called Amwaku. And we went into a fight. And this guy gave me such a beating. My goodness. This guy really whacked the hell out of me. You know, I went home with broken lips and all. And that was the last time I got into a boxing ring. You know, but I did boxing. Yeah. I used to play football. In fact, I used to play for a team in Tema called the Black Power. You know, I wasn't a particularly good footballer, but I used to play in the 5 position. And you know why? Because you can't get past me with the ball. You know, and I play table tennis. I still play table tennis. I play quite a bit of table tennis. You know, when I have the time, I play table tennis. You know.
Yeah. I have to ask you one question. I under the NDC, you stood up. And actually, you campaigned with MPP to make sure that the NDC exits. And the MPP is in power, and you're standing up against, not standing up against the MPP, but against policy. Are you a non-conformist by nature? That do you think there's a particular time that you will not be fighting establishment?
Well, I think there's several things that we should not conform with. There are many things. I mean, things that lead to death and destruction, things that exacerbate the suffering of our people, things that don't make sense and so on, are things that we cannot accept and live with, and we should not conform with those things. You know, so there's a certain type of non-conformist attitude which is healthy. Of course, if there are things which are good, things which are edifying, things which move society forward, things which increase our capacity to reproduce ourselves at qualitatively higher levels and so on, then we should conform, you know, and so on. Now, it's important for me that some of the things that we stood up against are still present. I mean, we fought against the structural adjustment program. What we're having today, either as HIPIC or Millennium Challenge account or whatever, it has the same rationale as the economic recovery program which was introduced in 1983. So we can't change. There's no basis for changing's sake, for making people think that you can change. What is the point of changing when the situation has not changed? You understand? So I think that to a very large extent, we are still in the same situation. You still have the situation where we do not have control over the prices of the things that we export, and we do not have control over the prices of the things that we import. Our gold mining industry is not in our hands, you understand. Fluctuations in the price of cocoa adversely continue to affect our development efforts and so on. These fundamentals have not changed, and I don't think that it is wise, or it is even in the national interest, you know, to give up the struggle. I also do not think that I will forever be in the struggle. I'm a human being like all others. I become weak, my brain power will reduce. You know, my physical power, my ability to stand up and walk and to talk will be reduced with time. I mean, at a certain point, I'm going to be like my mother, confined to a bed, unable to recognize my siblings, unable to recognize my friends, and so on. When that time comes, it would not be me, but nature would have caught up with me, and nature would have said to me that you can't continue. And I won't continue because it will be impossible to continue.
But until then?
Well, for as long as I live, I would try as much as I can to do the right thing. And doing the right thing would mean speaking up against injustice. Doing the right thing would be to learn about our society so that we can all point to some of the solutions to the problems which confront all of us. And that's normal. Everybody ought to be like that.
Everybody ought to be like that. We've been hanging out with Mr. Kwesi Pratt, and Kwesi, it's been fun having you here. Wow, wow, that was absolutely splendid, and that was me going way back, up close and personal, with Kwesi Pratt, one of the most distinguished Ghanaians who has crossed the face of this earth right here in Ghana. Put your hands together again, one more for Kwesi Pratt. And until we come back again with the next throwback, KSM signing off, as I always do. We are out of, let the whole world say, let me take off my glasses. Yeah.
The KSM Show.